We're going to continue with the first chapter of Oversea Under Stone. We have met the Drew family, mother and father, Simon the oldest, Jane the middle child, and Barney the youngest, and they have gone to visit their great uncle Mary, who has known the family forever. He discovers old cities, and they're staying with him at the seaside, but a mysterious yacht has suddenly appeared, which Jane saw Uncle Mary frown at. I think we know all we need to know to continue. The harbor was almost deserted. The sun was hot on their faces, and they felt the warmth of the stone quayside strike at their feet through their sandal soles. In the center, in front of tall wooden warehouse doors, the quay jutted out square into the water, and a heap of empty boxes towered above their heads. 3 seagulls walked tolerantly to the edge out of their way. Before them, a small forest of spars and ropes swayed. The tide was only half high, and the decks of the moored boats were down below the quayside, out of sight. "Hey," Simon said, pointing through the harbor entrance. "That yacht's come back. Look, isn't she marvelous?" The slim white boat sat at anchor beyond the harbor, well protected from the open sea by the headland on which the grey house stood. Jane said, "Do you think there is something odd about her?" "Odd? Why should there be?" "Oh, I don't know." "Perhaps she belongs to the harbour master," Barney said. "Places this size don't have harbour masters, you little fathead. Only ports like father went to in the Navy." "Oh, yes, they do, clever sticks. There's a little black door on the corner over there, marked Harbour Master's office." Barney hopped triumphantly up and down, and frightened a seagull away. It ran a few steps, and then flew off, flapping low over the water, and bleeding into the darkness. "Oh, well," Simon said amiably, shoving his hands in his pockets and standing with his legs apart, rocking on his heels, in his captain-on-the-bridge stance. "One up still. That boat must belong to somebody pretty rich. You could cross the Channel in her, or even the Atlantic." "Ugh," said Jane. She swam as well as anybody, but she was the only member of the Drew family who disliked the open sea. "Fancy crossing the Atlantic in a thing like that." Simon grinned wickedly. "Smashing. Great big waves, picking you up and bringing you down swoosh. Everything falling about, pots and pans upsetting in the galley, and the deck going up and down, up and down." "You'll make her sick," Barney said calmly. "Rubbish on dry land out here in the sun." "Oh, yes, you will. She looks a bit green already, look." "I don't." "Oh, yes, you do. I can't think why you weren't ill in the train, like you usually are. Just think of those waves in the Atlantic, and the mast swaying about, and nobody with an appetite for their breakfast except me." "Oh, shut up! I'm not going to listen." And poor Jane turned and ran round the side of a mountain of fishy-smelling boxes, which had probably been having more effect on her imagination than the thought of the sea. "Girls," said Simon cheerfully. There was suddenly an ear-splitting crash from the other side of the boxes, a scream and a noise of metal jingling on concrete. Simon and Barney gazed horrified at one another for a moment and rushed around to the other side. Jane was lying on the ground with a bicycle on top of her, its front wheel still spinning round. A tall, dark-haired boy lay sprawled across the quay not far away. A box of tins and packets of food had spilled from the bicycle carrier, and milk was trickling in a white puddle from a broken bottle splintered glittering in the sun. The boy scrambled to his feet, glaring at Jane. He was all in navy blue, his trousers tucked into Wellington boots. He had a short, thick neck and a strangely flat face, twisted now with ill temper. "Look where he's going, can't he?" he snarled, the Cornish accent made ugly by anger. "Get out of me way!" He jerked the bicycle upright, taking no heed of Jane. The pedal caught her ankle, and she winced in pain. "It wasn't my fault," she said, with some spirit. "You came rushing up without looking while you were going." Barney crossed to her in silence and helped her to her feet. The boy sullenly began picking up the spilled tins and slamming them back into the box. Jane picked one up to help, but as she reached it toward the box, the boy knocked her hand away, sending the tin spilling across the quay. "Leave it alone!" he growled. "Look here," said Simon indignantly, "there's no need for that." "Shut your mouth," said the boy shortly, without even looking up. "Shut your own," said Simon belligerently. "Oh, Simon, don't," said Jane unhappily. "If he wants to be beastly, let him." Her leg was stinging viciously, and blood trickled down from a graze on her knee. Simon looked at her flushed face. Hearing the strain in her voice, he bit his lip. The boy pushed his bicycle to lean against the pile of boxes, scowling at Barney as he jumped nervously out of the way. Then a rage suddenly snarled out of him again. "Off the lot of ye!" he snapped. They had never heard the word he used, but the tone was unmistakable, and Simon went hot with resentment and clenched his fists to lunge forward. But Jane clutched him back, and the boy moved quickly to the edge of the quay and climbed down over the edge, facing them, the box of groceries in his arms. They heard a thumping, clattering noise, and looking over the edge, they saw him lurching about in a rowing dinghy. He untied its mooring rope from a ring in the wall and began edging out through the outer boats into the open harbor, standing up with one oar thrust down over the stern. Moving hastily and angrily, he clotted the dinghy hard against the side of one of the big fishing boats, but took no notice. Soon he was out in open water, sculling rapidly, one-handed, and glaring back at them in sneering contempt. As he did so, they heard a clatter of feet moving rapidly over hollow wood from inside the injured fishing boat. A small, wizened figure popped up suddenly from a hatch in the deck and waved its arms about in fury, shouting over the water toward the boy in a surprisingly deep voice. The boy deliberately turned his back, still sculling, and the dinghy disappeared outside the harbor entrance round the jutting wall. The little man shook his fist and turned toward the quay, leaping neatly from the deck of one boat to another until he reached the ladder in the wall and climbed up by the children's feet. He wore the inevitable navy blue jersey and trousers with long boots reaching up his legs. "Clumsy young limb, that Bill Hoover," he said crossly. "Wait till I catch him. That's all, you just wait." Then he seemed to realize that the children were more than just part of the quay. He grunted, flashing a quick glance at their tense faces and the blood on Jane's knee. "Thought I heard voices from below," he said more gently. "You been having a trouble with him?" He jerked his head out to sea. "He knocked my sister over with his bike," Simon said indignantly. "It was my fault, really. I made her run into him, but he was beastly rude, and he bashed Jane's hand away, and then he went off before I could hit him," he ended lamely. The old fisherman smiled at them. "Ah, well, don't he take no count of it? He am a bad lot, that lad, evil-tempered as they come, and evil-minded with it. You keep away from un." "We shall," said Jane, with feeling, rubbing her leg gingerly. The fisherman clicked his tongue. "That's a nasty old cut you got there, my dear. You want to go and get washed up? You'm on holiday here, I dare say?" "We're staying at the Grey House," said Simon, "up there on the hill." The fisherman glanced at him quickly, a flicker of interest passing over the impassive brown wrinkled face. "Are he, then? I wonder, maybe—" Then he stopped short, strangely, as if he were quickly changing his mind about what he had been going to say. Simon, puzzled, waited for him to go on, but Barney, who had not been listening, turned round from where he had been peering over the edge of the quay. "Is that your boat over there?" The fisherman looked at him, half taken aback and half amused, as he would have looked at some small, unexpected animal that barked. "That's right, me handsome. The one I just come off." "Don't the other fishermen mind you jumping over their boats?" The old man laughed, a cheerful, rusty noise. "I'd no other way to get ashore from there. Nobody minds you coming across their boat so long as you don't mark her." "Are you going out fishing?" "Not for a while, my dear," said the fisherman amiably, pulling a piece of dirty rag from his pocket and scrubbing at oil marks on his hands. "Go out with sundown, we do, and come back with the dawn." Barney beamed. "I shall get up early and watch you come in." "Believe that when I see it," said the fisherman with a twinkle. "Now look, you run and take your little sister home and wash that leg. Don't know what scales and muck have got into it off here." He scuffed at the quay with his glistening boot. "Yes, come on, Jane," Simon said. He took one more look out at the quiet line of boats, then put his hand to peer into the sun. "I say, that oaf with the bicycle, he's going on board the yacht." Jane and Barney looked. Out beyond the far harbor wall, a dark shape was bobbing against the long white hull of the silent yacht. They could just see the boy climbing up the side, and two figures meeting him on the deck. Then all three disappeared, and the boat lay deserted again. "Ah," said the fisherman, "so that's it. Young Bill were buying stores and petrol and all yesterday, enough for a navy, but nobody couldn't get it out of him who they was for. Tidy old boat, that'n, cruising, I suppose. Can't see what he made all the mystery about." He began to walk along the quay, a rolling small figure, with the folded tops of his boots slapping his legs at every step. Barney trotted beside him, talking earnestly, and rejoined the others at the corner, as the old man, waving to them, turned off toward the village. "His name's Mr. Penhollow, and his boat's called the White Heather. He says they've got 100 stone of pilchard last night, and they'll get more tomorrow because it's going to rain." "One day you'll ask too many questions," said Jane. "Rain!" said Simon incredulously, looking up at the blue sky. "That's what he said." "Rubbish! He must be nuts." "I bet he's right. Fishermen always know things, especially Cornish fishermen. You ask Great-Uncle Mary." But Great-Uncle Mary, when they sat down to their first supper in the grey house, was not there. Only their parents and the beaming red-cheeked village woman, Mrs. Polk, who was to come every day to help with the cooking and cleaning. Great-Uncle Mary had gone away. "He must have said something," Jane said. Father shrugged. "Not really. He just muttered about having to go and look for something, and roared off in the car like a thunderbolt." "But we've only just got here," said Simon Hurt. "Never mind," Mother said comfortingly. "You know what he is. He'll be back in his own good time." Barney gazed dreamily at the Cornish pastries Mrs. Polk had made for their supper. "He's gone on a quest. He might take years and years. You can search and search on a quest, and in the end you may never get there at all." "Quest my foot," Simon said irritably. "He's just gone chasing after some stupid old tomb in a church or something. Why couldn't he have told us?" "I expect he'll be back in the morning," Jane said. She looked out of the window, across the low grey wall edging the road. The light was beginning to die, and as the sun sank behind their headland, the sea was turning to a dark grey-green, and slow mist creeping into the harbor. Through the growing haze she saw a dim shape move down on the water, and above it a brief flash of light, first a red pinprick in the gloom, and then a green and white points of light above both. She sat up suddenly as she realized that what she could see was the mysterious white yacht moving out of Treswick Harbor as silently and strangely as it had come. And that is the end of Chapter 1.